You're joining us for another deep dive, and today we're tackling something that might seem a bit technical,
Yeah, definitely behind the scenes for most people.
but it's absolutely crucial if you want to understand, how much you can really trust a company's financial reports.
We're talking about the independent auditor's report.
Specifically, what happens when that report isn't, well, completely clean.
Right, the modifications.
We're diving into modified opinions, and we're drawing our insights mainly from the International Standard on Auditing, that's ISA 705, revised.
And it's worth sticking around for, even if you're not a finance expert.
Definitely. Understanding these modifications gives you a real lens into a company's financial health, potential risks, too.
Valuable knowledge, really, for anyone wanting to get informed quickly.
So our mission today, let's break down what these modified opinions actually mean and, crucially, why they should be on your radar.
Exactly. Think of an auditor's report like a health check for a company's finances.
Okay.
Most times you get a good bill of health. Clean opinion. But sometimes the auditor finds things that need a closer look.
Or maybe they can't get all the info they need.
Precisely. They can't be sure everything's okay. That's where these modifications come in. They signal reservations.
Okay, so our guide here, ISA 705, it mentions right near the start, paragraph 2, I think, that there are 3 main ways an opinion can be modified.
That's right. 3 types.
What are the key distinctions? What do we need to get our heads around?
So we're looking at a qualified opinion, an adverse opinion, and a disclaimer of opinion.
Qualified adverse disclaimer. Got it.
And the standard makes it clear. The type depends on 2 main things.
Which are?
First, the nature of the issue itself. What's the problem? Second, the auditor's professional judgment.
Judgment about what?
About how significant and, importantly, how widespread the standard calls it pervasive, the impact of that issue is on the financial statements overall.
Pervasive. Okay, so is it just one problem area, or does it mess up the whole picture?
Exactly. Is it isolated, or does it cast doubt on everything?
Right, so it's not just some minor typo. It could actually mislead people using the financials.
Definitely.
So when does an auditor actually have to issue one of these? What's the trigger point?
Well, paragraph 6 of ISA 705 lays out 2 main triggers.
Okay.
First, if the auditor concludes, based on the evidence they've gathered, that the financial statements as a whole contain material misstatements.
Material misstatements, meaning big enough errors to matter?
Big enough that they could influence decisions, yeah.
Yeah.
An error or something left out that's significant.
And the second trigger?
The second is when the auditor just couldn't get enough sufficient, appropriate audit evidence.
So they couldn't check everything they needed to.
Right. And because of that, they can't confidently say the financials are free from material misstatement. They just don't have enough proof.
So it boils down to either we found a big problem or we couldn't get enough information to be sure there isn't one.
That's a good summary. A known issue or a lack of evidence.
Makes sense. Okay, let's dig into each type. Starting with the qualified opinion. What's the essence of this one?
A qualified opinion, paragraph 7 covered this, is basically the auditor saying, look, everything seems okay except for this specific thing.
Except for?
Well, it's used in 2 main scenarios. First, when the auditor has found material misstatements, but these problems aren't pervasive.
Not pervasive, so the issue is significant, but it's contained.
Exactly. It doesn't wreck the whole picture. Second scenario is when the auditor couldn't get enough evidence.
Like we just discussed.
Yes, but the possible effects of whatever might be hidden are also judged to be material, but again, not pervasive.
So same logic. The problem or the potential unknown problem is significant, but it doesn't undermine the entire report.
Precisely. Material but not pervasive.
Yeah.
That's the key phrase for qualified.
Okay. Material but not pervasive. Got it. Now, the appendix in ISS 705 gives some examples. Illustration 1 talks about inventories being misstated. Can you sort of paint a picture?
Sure. Imagine a company's inventory. All their stock is significantly miscounted, or maybe valued wrongly.
Okay.
This directly affects their cost of goods sold calculation, and therefore the net income they report. It's wrong.
Right, that flows through.
The auditors found this error. They decided it's material big enough to matter. But they also decided this mistake, while important, doesn't fundamentally distort the overall picture.
So it mainly affects inventory and maybe profit, but not everything else.
Yeah, it's primarily limited to those areas, not pervasive.
Right. A notable issue, but contained. Now, illustration 3 is a bit different, qualified because they couldn't get evidence about an investment in a foreign associate. What's the problem there?
So in this case, the auditor hit a roadblock. They couldn't get the info they needed to check out the company's investment in, say, a subsidiary overseas.
Why not?
Could be anything. Maybe they couldn't access the foreign company's books, legal restrictions, who knows.
Hmm.
So because they lacked that evidence, they couldn't be totally sure the investment was reported correctly.
But they didn't think it was pervasive.
Exactly. Based on everything else they could check, they judged that this lack of info probably wouldn't have widespread effects. So they qualify. Their check was limited in this specific area.
Okay. So qualified is like a yellow flag, signals a specific problem or potential issue, but not like a total system failure.
That's a good analogy.
Okay, next up, the adverse opinion. This one sounds worse.
It is. Definitely more serious. Paragraph 8 tells us an adverse opinion is issued when the auditor finds misstatements that are both material and pervasive.
Ah, so material A and D pervasive, both boxes ticked.
Yes. This is a strong statement. It means the issues aren't just significant. They're so widespread, they fundamentally misrepresent the company's financial position or performance.
So the numbers are just wrong, fundamentally.
In the auditor's professional judgment, yes. The financial statements simply do not present a fair view according to the rules.
Wow, so if you see an adverse opinion.
That's a huge red flag. It suggests the financials cannot be relied upon. Could indicate serious trouble, maybe even fraud.
Okay. Material and pervasive. That's concerning. Illustration 2 gives an example about a company not consolidating a subsidiary. Why is that such a big deal?
Well, it's a major violation of accounting rules. If a company controls another one, a subsidiary, it usually has to combine their financial results, consolidation.
Right.
In this scenario, the company just didn't, when it should have.
And the impact.
By leaving out the subsidiary's numbers, the main company's consolidated financials give a completely misleading picture of the whole group's health and performance.
Because it affects lots of different numbers, assets, liabilities.
Exactly. Assets, liabilities, revenues, expenses. The omission makes the misstatement pervasive. It touches almost everything.
So an adverse opinion is the only way to go there.
It's the appropriate and necessary response, yes. The impact is just too widespread and significant.
Got it. The whole story is skewed because a big piece is missing. Clear warning sign. Okay, final type. The disclaimer of opinion. Sounds like the auditor just throws their hands up.
That's not far off, actually. Paragraph 9 explains it's issued when the auditor can't get sufficient appropriate evidence.
Like the qualified situation.
Yes, but here, the possible effects of things they couldn't detect could be both material and pervasive.
Ah, okay. So the potential unknown problem could be huge and widespread.
Exactly. The limitations on what they could actually audit were so severe, they just can't form any opinion at all on the financial statements as a whole.
Any other times?
Paragraph 10 also notes it can happen in extremely rare cases with multiple significant uncertainties, just too much fog to see clearly.
So not that they found huge problems necessarily, but they couldn't even look properly, and the potential for massive hidden problems is too high.
Precisely.
Illustrations 4 and 5 give examples. Illustration 4 is about not getting evidence on a single element. What kind of element are we talking about?
In illustration 4, the auditors hit a major wall trying to get info about a really significant investment.
How significant?
So significant to the company's overall finances that not being able to verify it casts serious doubt on the entire financial picture. Any potential misstatement there could easily be material and pervasive.
So they just can't give an opinion.
They conclude they can't, no.
And illustration 5, that's about multiple elements where they couldn't get evidence. Sounds even worse.
It is. Illustration 5 shows a situation where the auditors face major limitations across many key areas.
Like what? What could cause that?
Maybe records were destroyed, fire or flood, or maybe management actively blocked access to certain things. Severe restrictions.
Okay.
When these limitations hit numerous important parts of the financials, the auditor just has no basis to say if the statements as a whole are fair. The risk of hidden, widespread material errors is just too high.
Yeah.
They have to disclaim.
Right. These different opinions clearly mean very different things. Now, the standard also mentions something really important. What if management tries to limit the audit scope?
Yeah, that's a huge red flag in itself.
Are there, like, certain industries or types of companies where this happens more often? What does that signal?
It is a major red flag, absolutely. Paragraphs 11 to 14 cover this.
Yeah.
If management restricts what auditors can look at, and the auditors can't find another way to get that info,
They have to react.
they have to consider the implications, seriously. They need to figure out if a qualified opinion or even a disclaimer is needed, depending on how pervasive the potential impact might be.
And if it's really bad.
Well, if the limitation is so severe, it would demand a disclaimer. The auditor also has to consider just withdrawing from the audit entirely, if that's possible and practical.
No. Walking away.
It signals a complete breakdown, raises serious questions about management's transparency. As for where it happens more, hard to say definitively. Maybe companies in financial distress, or maybe those with a history of questionable accounting.
So management actively blocking the auditors, that's a massive warning sign for anyone looking at that company. Now, when an auditor does issue one of these modified opinions, what does it actually look like in the report? How do we, the readers, know what's going on and why?
Good question. Paragraphs 16 to 27 detail how the report changes. The key thing is a separate section.
A separate section.
Yes, titled something like Basis for Qualified Opinion, or Basis for Adverse Opinion, or Basis for Disclaimer of Opinion, obviously depending on the type.
And that section explains things.
Absolutely crucial. It clearly spells out the specific issue that led to the modification, describes the problem, and importantly, explains the possible effects on the financials.
What if it was because they couldn't get evidence?
Then this section explains why their access was limited. What information couldn't they get? It's all about transparency so readers understand why the auditor couldn't give that clean opinion.
That's really helpful. So it's not just a one-word change, there's a whole explanation.
Exactly. It's not just some technicality. It's a key piece of the puzzle for assessing trustworthiness. Should definitely prompt more questions.
And presumably, this doesn't just appear out of nowhere in the final report. There's communication beforehand.
Oh, absolutely. Paragraph 30 stresses communication with those charged with governance.
Meaning the board? Audit committee?
Typically, yes. When the auditor thinks they'll probably need to modify the opinion, they have to tell the governance body early on.
What do they tell them?
Their intention, the reasons why, and even the specific wording they're planning to use in the report.
Ah, okay. So it allows for discussion. Maybe the company can fix it.
It allows for discussion, gives the company a chance to respond or fix things if possible, and ensures the oversight body is fully aware of the auditor's view. No last-minute surprises.
Good. It's a process. And as we mentioned, that appendix in ISS 705 has these concrete examples, the illustrations.
Right. Seeing the actual wording helps a lot.
We've talked about the circumstances, but seeing how it's written.
That's right. The appendix has clear examples, qualified opinions for both misstatements and scope limits, an adverse opinion for that pervasive consolidation issue, and disclaimers for scope limits affecting one critical area or multiple areas.
So looking at those can really help understand how these concepts translate into practice.
Definitely recommend checking them out if you want to see the real language.
Okay, so let's wrap this up for you, the listener. A modified auditor's opinion, it's a really important signal.
Absolutely. It tells you there are potential significant issues or limitations you need to know about.
Whether it's qualified, except for this one thing,
Or adverse indicating widespread fundamental problems.
or a disclaimer, meaning the auditors couldn't even form a reliable view. Each type signals something different.
Different levels of severity, different underlying issues.
Yeah.
And thinking about that jump from qualified, except for this, to adverse. Everything's wrong.
It's that pervasive nature, right? How widespread the problem is.
That's the key differentiator, yes. Does it taint the whole report?
And understanding the reasons behind it in that basis for opinion section.
Just as crucial. It gives you the context. What's the problem? Why couldn't they get evidence? It helps you assess the impact.
Decide if you need to dig deeper.
Exactly.
So, considering how these modifications highlight uncertainties or actual misstatements, what questions does this raise for you when you're looking at a company?
Whether you might invest or work there.
Or just observe its impact. It really shows you need to look beyond just the headline numbers. Pay attention to that auditor's opinion and the reasons why.
Indeed. And for those keen to learn more,
Yeah.
well, looking at actual public auditors' reports, or even diving into the full standards like ISIS 705, can give you an even richer understanding.
Understand the frameworks for transparency and accountability better.
Precisely.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. It might seem technical,
It can be.
but getting these nuances can really empower you when trying to make sense of the financial world. Until next time, keep thinking critically.
And keep asking questions.